My series on the Roaring Delta has been very scatterbrained and messy. I've made a video, gone back on what I've said, and suggested many contradictory ways the story could end. Maybe the final boss is a Titan. Maybe it's the three Delta Warriors. Confusing stuff. However, in this video, I want to tie everything I've been talking about together into one final video. I want to piece together the confusing religious references, Chris's seemingly contradictory motives, and anything else into a backstory, as well as a feasible method for how the final few chapters will play out. Let us consider the words of Gerson Boom. We will never know the pieces of the prophecy lost to time. As for me, I see the blank pages as an invitation to write. As was the case with Undertale, I feel as though it is likely the prophecy will be carried out regardless. Whether you play the role of a holy angel and protector of the worlds, or whether you play the role of a devil's angel who disguises itself as a light and forces a horrific outcome, the prophecy will be fulfilled. Throughout this video, I will be interchangeably referring to the character of the angel as the angel, the player, the soul, and us, as I believe Chapter 4 firmly confirms player-angel theory. This video will focus on the good route, although I do believe Snowgrave, among many other choices, will lead to a different, yet textually the same outcome. I will have some rules. Number 1, every image and text we see in Chapter 4 must come to pass in some way. This means Noelle is the second hero of the prophecy, and Susie is and last the girl at last the girl. Susie is part of this prophecy, but what role does she play? Simply put, these were pieces of the prophecy lost to time, an invitation to write. Chapter 1, the heroes defeat the king and stop the dragon. Not defeat the dragon, but stop the dragon. Perhaps they stop the dragon not by defeating it, but by making the dragon their friend? Susie is this dragon, the one Gerson wrote as being a friend of the heroes. Love finds its way to the girl. Is this through Chris in the Snowgrave route, or through Susie in the normal route? Either way, this prophecy shall come to pass. Therefore, I will also take the image of the soul entering Noelle as a thing that will happen on either route. In the Snowgrave route, this was represented as a horrific metaphor of the soul forcefully entering Noelle, as sort of like a quote-unquote romantic relationship. In the normal route, however, perhaps instead of being framed as a lover-to-lover relationship, this will instead be framed as a friend-to-friend relationship. Letting someone into your heart is not always romantic. It is also an expression used to refer to a dear friend, or a trustworthy person. Therefore, the metaphor in the normal route is allowed to be entirely different and be completely devoid of any romantic implications. In the normal route, Noelle would willingly let the soul into her heart, not as a lover, but as a friend. I can explain how later. I also want to revise the players of the Roaring Delta, as I've looked at it more closely, and it instead seems to be an entire chessboard of characters. I've assessed the 3 characters I'm certain to be part of the Roaring Delta, Carol, Death Knight, and Chris, and realized something. Carol would more closely resemble the Queen than a bishop, would she not? Also, Asgore. Asgore is saying he's doing something for Carol, but we're not sure what. He also mentions a black shard, and he desperately wants to be Toriel's husband again. Suspicious man he is. Asgore, chief of police, perfect candidate for a king piece. So now that leaves a bishop for our chessboard. Perhaps this could be Alvin, actually. I was skeptical about Alvinite for a while, but considering he could have some longing to see his father brought back to life, he could have robbed the grave under command of Carol. So now we have the board. Carol the Queen, Asgore the King, Alvin the Bishop, Des the Knight, and Chris the Rook. And of course, the pawns would just be any of the knight's servants. possibly the Titans. Carol, the queen, the powerhouse of chess, she is the mastermind. Now, let us assess motivation. Carol brought Des back in the form of a Darkner, but the Darkners are locked to the Dark World. Des is locked to the Dark World, but Carol longs to see her daughter again. Asgore wants to prove to Toriel what happened on the night Des went missing, as Des going missing was likely what caused the divorce. Alvin wants to see his father again, in addition to seeing the completion of Lord of the Hammer. Des is merely listening to dear old Mom, but having fun doing so. Of course, why wouldn't Des want to come back to life to see her sister again? And as for Chris, well, perhaps it's the same thing Asgore wants, to be a big, happy, complete family again. Fact of the matter is, everyone involved here wants to bring the Roaring not to cause chaos, but to escape from the damage the deaths of loved ones has done to their lives. They want to revive the dead. They look to the prophecy, and seeing the prophecy, seeing the second hero, they see Noelle, the perfect girl of hometown, the selfless hero who would do anything to bring her sister back to life. Although this means there are 5 key players, I still refer to this theory as Roaring Delta, because I believe Carol, Des, and Chris are the only ones aware of the darkest parts of this plan. They are looking to the prophecy, but they are reading a foul interpretation into it, and as such are seeking to make the angel a devil. Let us consider the idea of Noelle, the second hero, finding love. Instead of trusting the prophecy and waiting for it to happen on its own, Carol is trying to force it, to force Noelle to find a suitor. If you pay attention, it seems as though Carol is trying to groom Chris and Noelle to be together, forcing them to ride the Ferris wheel together, telling Chris to take Noelle to the festival. This is exactly what the Snowgrave route brings, a forced relationship between Noelle and Chris. Carol is following it so closely, her own interpretations so closely, that she is blind to everything else. The Snowgrave route is embracing the route of Chris and Noelle's trauma, the route of a forced relationship. I doubt Asgore or Alvin know about this part of the plan, and Chris may be too young to do anything about it. After all, Chris is the youngest piece of the chessboard, the easiest to manipulate. Let's say, for the sake of argument, the Roaring makes the light world and dark world one. The dead and the living shall now live in the same space, but it is a chaotic mess where no one belongs. The Darkners freeze and the Lightners go blind, and the Titans rage upon the surface. But what if there was a way to end the chaos? There is. The final part of the prophecy, the Great Tragedy. Let's consider the Christianity and Narnia references for a second. Noelle is clearly built up as being a Christ figure, and the prophecy implied she will one day have the heart placed inside her. The death was tragic, but the death brought peace. Now let's also consider that our role in the story is not an omnipotent, all-knowing, all-powerful God. Rather, we are a limited angel that merely has the choice to make Christ-like actions. So if a death is needed to bring peace, perhaps a chaos as powerful as the Roaring can only be sealed if the Lightner vessel is used up. The final tragedy is the death of a Lightner. Perhaps this is the sacrifice Carol seeks to make. Police sacrifice, she says. Since Carol is trying to force the prophecy, it makes sense she would take an unwilling vessel for the soul to inhabit. As such, this is likely also a part of the plan Asgore and Alvin are unaware of. And let me rephrase, perhaps Asgore and Alvin don't even know that Carol is specifically trying to bring the Roaring. Merely that Carol has promised to do something for the two of them. To either bring back their loved ones or set things right. Carol would want a sacrifice she hates, one she considers to be incompetent and weak. Not Asgore, no, she needs Asgore for the plan. She has a promise to make good on. Carol would want one of the other officers who lost deaths that night, someone like Undyne or Napstablook. So what if Carol's plan is to force the soul into a sacrifice, and force the sacrifice to die to seal up the chaos of the Roaring? This is why she needed Undyne. Her base? The bunker. The shelter. I take back what I said about the knight needing the code. I think the TV Dark World was set up to claim this sacrifice. To get Undyne over there so they could capture her. I think Carol probably knew the codes the whole time. This is the plan. Start the Roaring, then seal it with a sacrifice. That way, the Darkners may now live in the light world, but the following destruction can be prevented quickly. This plan was set in motion by Carol before the beginning of the game, but of course, she needed to find a way to force the angel to inhabit a vessel. There's another player in this story, one also associated with devil imagery, but one who is not on the chessboard. This would be Gaster. Gaster is likely also a figure lost to the Dark World, seeking to find a way back to the Light World through the Roaring, but also needing to seal the resulting chaos. Gaster somehow is able to make contact with the world above the Light World, a heaven of sorts, reaching one of this world's many angels, us, the players, the ones who are needed to fulfill this prophecy. Gaster's able to get in contact with us and allow us to make a vessel. But something destroys this vessel. What and how? I now believe this vessel destroyer to be Chris. But why and how? Well, Chris is known for practicing dark magic with Caddy, summoning demons and placing hexes on townsfolk. All fun and games to them, but to someone like Carol, these demonic rituals can be useful. Intercepting what is essentially Gaster's prayer, they are able to take the angel captive and use it for their own whims and desires. Why? Well, like I said before, they don't trust the prophecy to happen in its own time. They want it to happen now. So, seeing the angel's presence and not knowing its intentions, Chris took the angel captive at Carol's command. Now, our self-insert is gone, and we are Chris's prisoner. By extension, we are Carol's prisoner. Gaster? Well, he did his part. He set the events of the story in motion. All he needs to do now is sit back and wait. It doesn't matter if his vessel is destroyed, because we're still in the world and we're still able to make the prophecy happen. This is what he's waiting for. No matter what route you take, he still calls it his Deltarune. After Chapter 4, Chris' narrator theory seems to be very likely. But also, Chris seems weirdly comfortable using you pronouns when referring to themselves. You do this, you do that, Chris says. Well, simply put, this is what Chris was able to accomplish. I am you, you are me. Therefore, Chris's role in Carol's plot is to hold the soul prisoner for when the sacrifice is to take place. It'll be someone Chris doesn't know or care about that much, the police chief Undyne. So that's our backstory. And now the events of Deltarune take place. Now, I want to discuss how things will end. First of all, we must consider what the final few chapters will be like. My predictions? The festival is outside, so I don't actually think that's the next Dark World. I think Chapter 5 will be Asgore's flower shop, and we'll learn more about his role in Carol's plot. Chapter 6 will be the bunker, Carol and the Knight's base of operations, and Chapter 7 will be the Roaring. The earth splits open in the middle of the festival, and everything falls into the Dark World. I will not discuss Chapter 5 much, but I do think Asgore will play a key role. Chapter 6 is when the sacrifice is going to take place. And now we get into some real speculation, so I'll paint a picture for you. It is now the time to open the Neo Dark Fountain, and we, the soul, are brought deep into the Dark World by Chris, the bunker. Susie and Rousey might not even be present in this chapter, although I don't know for certain. Chris brings us before Carol and the Knight, and they are ready to form the Neo-Dark Fountain. Undyne is tied up in bounds, for even she can't withstand the Knight's strength. Chris takes us out of the chest and hands us to Carol. Carol lifts the heart in the air, has a whole monologue about how the dead will be brought to life. The Knight opens the Neo-Dark Fountain, and they wait for the roaring before making the sacrifice final. Carol forces us into Undyne's chest. However, tapping into Undyne's strength, we resist and are able to break her bonds. We, now controlling Undyne's body, must run from the Knight and find a safe hiding place. After finding a safe hiding place, we are then found by Chris. Chris, after an adventure that's filled them with doubts over Carol's intentions, then rips us out of Undyne's chest. However, the Knight and Carol approach. Chris hides us in a nearby vent or something. Carol and the Knight then come in and proceed to fight Undyne, still thinking the soul is inside her. However, Undyne, now on her guard, is able to put up a much better fight than in Chapter 3. We, as the soul, then quietly sneak out of the vents, and we try to find a way out of the dark world. Unfortunately, the Neo-Dark Fountain has already been opened, and the roaring is set in place. We, as the disembodied soul, now travel through the light world, and we try to find someone that can help us. Noelle. Noelle finds us and picks us up, rather curious as to what we are. She brings us home. However, we use the computer to tell Noelle what we are, typing out keys in a text-to-speech similar to the one from Chapter 2. We ask if Noelle trusts us, and she says she does. So now, Noelle follows us through this chapter. What I think will happen is that we'll be disembodied and we'll be like floating around, and Noelle will be following us closely behind. It is now the midst of the roaring. Everything is chaotic, and not even Carol can control the Titans her plan rose from the ground. The Knight, I am unsure. Maybe they side with the Titans, maybe they don't. We don't know. We already had a fight with the Knight, and I doubt another one would work if it's any easier. But we'll see. We lead Noelle somewhere so she can know the prophecy and how it's all been playing out right before us. After learning that a Lightner's sacrifice must be made to seal the Roaring's chaos, she then willingly decides to be that sacrifice, regardless of what we want. Noelle lets us into her heart, not as a lover, but as a friend. And we then take her to the Neo-Dark Fountain to seal it. Chris is too weak to fight without a soul, and Rousey has turned to stone. However, Susie stands in front of us. Even if a Lightner sacrifice must be made to stop the roaring, there's no way Susie would allow this. And so, the tragedy, we must now fight Susie. If we fail, the world is drenched in darkness. But if we win, Noelle's fate is sealed. She will die. Now, Noelle must traverse the Neo-Dark Fountain, the heart of darkness, and fight the embodiment of pure nightmare. Perhaps this fight will play out similar to Omega Flowey in the original Undertale, the final boss of the neutral ending. At the end of this fight, Noelle will unfortunately die, but the Dark Fountain will be sealed, and the chaos will begin to fade. The Titans, the beings of pure darkness, will fade, as will the darkness itself. But the Lightners will have to rebuild their society, and the Darkners will remain as statues for all eternity. This ending matches the melancholic feel of Undertale's neutral ending, getting attached to so many characters who are left in a miserable place to fend for themselves. But what if this wasn't the end? What if I told you there was a way to get a better ending? Because, after all, if Noelle is anything like Jesus, or like Aslan, well, Jesus didn't stay dead, did he? And there is a way for people to be brought back from the dead in Deltarune, a reloaded save file. What if this ends much the same way Undertale Pacifist did, where you first needed to get the ending where Asgore dies before you could reload to get the good ending. Reload to just before the Susie fight and do something different. Now, what the good ending's going to look like, I truly don't know. However, I have considered, what if it has something to do with the Eggman? If the Eggman is Grandpa Semi, or some other positive foil to Gaster, it is possible that he could prepare a vessel for us if we find all his eggs. Perhaps. If you ask me, the good ending, the true ending of Deltarune, will be one where we set the world in a state where all Darkners belong and all Lightners can see. A vessel like what Gaster tried to make is probably our best option for a game ended with minimal tragedy. However, how this will play out and whatever our final boss of the pacifist ending is going to be is entirely unclear. Now, let's talk about the final thing, the banishing of the Angel's Heaven. What is this exactly? Well, I think it's simply us as the angel separating from the world now that our purpose of divine intervention has been completed. After all, it says that after the angel is banished, that's when the angel will meet with its desire. So, what is our desire? The sealing of the roaring, or leaving the characters in an endless night? At the end, it will be the three heroes and the dragon, Susie, who will see us depart. Who will see us depart from the world and be banished from Chris's soul. We will leave the world in the state we desired, and our save file will be locked to that ending. I am positive my theory is not 100% true, however, but I do think it could leave some details for theorists to talk about. This is kind of my interpretation of some things that may or may not happen towards the end of Deltarune. As of now, I do very firmly believe in Death Knight theory. I believe Chris is working with the Knight, but more so as coercion as opposed to just genuinely being evil. I believe Carol is the mastermind behind all this stuff. And I think Asgore and Alvin might be involved in Carol's plan, but probably to a lesser extent than the Knight and Chris. That's kind of my theory. Do with it what you will. I know it's not 100% correct. But yeah, just do with it what you will.